we need to elevate why that's the case.
Exactly. Recording this computer. So now we are live and we are recording, Scott and Josh.
Okay, got it. I think that what we'll do is we'll wait just a drop until exactly the hour, and then we'll go. And if Roger joins in, he'll join in. There we go.
Do we have any update on Roger?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi everybody, my name is Scott Hillier. I'm independent film director and president of both ÉCU, the European Independent Film Festival, and the All Asian Independent Film Festival. Welcome to our usual ÉCU Friday Live here from a slightly grey and cold Paris. So wherever you are from around the world, welcome along. As always, we try to bring in ÉCU Friday Lives on our podcast, some interesting things for our community of independent filmmakers. And today's ÉCU Friday Live is about environmental filmmaking. And the reason it came about was I worked for the BBC for 15 years and I'm a documentarian by heart. And I've made a lot of films and a lot of documentaries, and I believe that documentaries is the true method of telling cinematic stories. I was listening to the BBC the other morning and they said, in the year 2023, the world has burned more fossil fuels than ever before. And it stopped me. And I went, really? How can that be? Out of everything that we know and everything we've seen and every film that we've read or heard about, how can that possibly be? So, the idea came in. I talked to one of our very clever young staff here and I said, well, let's investigate this. Let's talk about what are we doing wrong? Why are we not getting the story out that in the year 2023 we still have a problem like this? And so the subject it came up and they've written a little blurb about it, and it says environmental film serve as impactful tools, compellingly illustrating the consequences of human actions on the planet. Through vivid storytelling and visuals, they raise awareness, inspiring viewers to adopt sustainable practices and advocate for environmental stewardship. These films catalyze societal change by fostering a collective sense of responsibility for the well-being of our planet. Again, I'm going to refer back to the title a couple of times during this chat with our illustrious guests on the ÉCU Friday Live, but just say, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing enough? What can we do better? Is it working? So today we have two guests. We have Josh Murphy, who we'll introduce shortly, and we also have Roger Williams, both very well-known filmmakers in this sphere of our world. So I'd like to thank them very much for joining us today. First of all, I'd like to talk to Josh. Josh is a director and producer, boasting several internationally awarded films. Most recently, Artificial, spelt wrongly, by the way, Josh. I'm Australian, so my English isn't really good, but it's spelt wrong. It's an investigative documentary highlighting the truth behind fish hatcheries. So, Josh, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey up until this time?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here. I know it was kind of last minute, and I'm always glad to join and bring perspective. And I think what's so interesting about this whole topic is why it's important that we tell these stories. I think that's what kind of drives me as a filmmaker, because I think we are the product of the stories we tell. And the only way we can pass on the things that are important to our people living now and the people that will live in the future is through story. Story is the thing that pulls us through and passes on those culturally relevant pieces of information. And so the film Artificial, spelled, as you mentioned, artificial with the name fish in it, was really about how we've lost touch with the importance of wild. So the film began with, here's a snippet here. The film began with the founder of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, asking me if I'd make this film that kind of explored this topic about what does it mean when we lose the importance of wild, and we begin to look at how humans have tried to control everything, and now humans even more so are trying to control nature. And we see this mostly through something as simple as salmon. Salmon is a species that has been here for millennia, of course, supported indigenous people almost solely for millennia. And now when humans came, we started harvesting salmon. We started catching salmon in amounts that was not at all sustainable. We started damming rivers. We started using rivers for commerce. And all of that had an impact on populations of fish that have supported people and cultures for years. And we, instead of saying, wow, are we really breaking the river and therefore breaking the chain that supports these amazing animals, or are we just manipulating it and then we'll go make our own version, which is what fish hatcheries do. We dam a river and then we replicate what was done wild through making fish hatcheries. The same thing we've done with fish farms. We've taken what was once wild because we crashed the ecosystems that made those fish and made them kind of available to the environment and to humans quite sustainably for a long time, and said, instead of supporting the environment, we're just going to make our own. And so in these kind of replications of what nature used to provide us, we are left with something lesser. And I think that's what the film Artificial tries to explore, which is how do we kind of point out the fact that as humanity continues to grow in its influence, certainly through burning of fossil fuels, as you'd mentioned, and manipulate large-scale landscape-level ecosystems, what is the cost? And I don't have an answer exactly right now for how we deal with this, but as society, we have to raise questions to be able to come up with an answer. And that's what I think the core of environmental filmmaking does today. It shows us what the true costs are, and then leaves us as the viewers saying, what do we do now? What do we do as individuals, and what do we do at a systemic level to make real change if we don't think that this is the path we should be on?
Amazing. I'll we're going to open that up a little bit. We'll take a deeper dive into that shortly, Josh. But I wanted to introduce our second guest, who's Roger Williams, who's also an award-winning filmmaker with a lot of experience. He's well known for his co-directing of the film River Blue. So I'd like to welcome him on board, Roger. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me. And glad to be a part of this. It's fantastic.
Nice. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your journey up to this point, Roger, and then also a little bit about River Blue?
Sure. What Josh was just talking about, I 100% believe, all of that. And I feel exactly the same way that, we have to tell these stories, and filmmakers like us, we got to, I guess sometimes put our heart on our sleeve and just go out and do things. And hopefully bring a bit of a spotlight to humanity and share our experiences and all the rest of that. So it's interesting, again, with Josh's film. I was actually looking to do a film, and I was looking at dams, I was looking at fish, I was looking at all kinds of different things, because I really believe in nature myself and live close to it. And what happened for us is we came across a satellite photo of this blue-black stain coming out of a river in China. And so further investigation, it was the blue gene capital of the world, and they were just dumping all their toxic dyes into the rivers, and which travel around the world and pollute everything. So I just knew that with blue jeans, that's an iconic kind of item, and it's something that almost everybody wears or has. And I went, there's a story there. So that's why we dug into it and did River Blue. And it was really disturbing, fascinating. It's amazing what the fashion industry has done to the world, and it's pretty brutal in a lot of places around the world that we're able to travel to. And on the flip side of that, we're able to go to Africa and see some really beautiful stuff too. But right next door to the beautiful stuff, pollution is just crashing up against it, and it's just brutal.
I'm gonna go back to our the title of what we're talking about today, and that's does it matter? And I'm being purposely provocative. I'm a BBC. I work for the BBC for a long time. I've asked a lot of questions to a lot of people, but I think to be blunt about this, I don't know whether you were on when I told you about the statistics that I heard of on the BBC the other day of just like there's been more fossil fuel burnt in 2023 than ever before. How the hell is that working? Are we doing something wrong? And I'm going to throw it back to Josh. Is what you're doing and what we're doing and what we're supporting, is it working?
Well, it better damn well be, because if not, what are we going to do? I mean, you just pointed out the problem. We're trying to scream from the mountaintops, hey, people, pay attention. And yet humanity just goes forward and says development, development, development. And there's every reason we should be saying, how do we develop? But there are other ways to develop than using the fossil fuel kind of model that has been promoted and invested into by the trillions upon trillions of dollars for the last 100+ years. There are other ways to realize development, which is good for humanity and perhaps better for the planet. But if we're not telling these stories, how will people find value? How will people realize that they're a trade-off? How will people begin to kind of have to wrestle with an idea that they thought was really interesting and simple, like wearing blue jeans, and then you say it, but at the expense of a river health? Like that, all of a sudden you're kind of left going, I want to know more about my blue jeans. Where do they come from? How are they made? Can I choose? Can I use the power of the purse? Can I be a consumer that uses my voice through my pocketbook, right? Because if we don't do that, we give industry a blank check to do whatever they want, and then we inherit the implications of that. The industry is built upon trying to put all of the benefits to themselves and all the negatives to the people, right? To the world. That's how business generally has been built, is they take the upside and they outsource the downside. And we at the end have to say, hey, if we're the recipient of that downside, we don't want that. And we're going to do something about it. And we're going to actually use our voice as consumers and as humans, as citizens, to say, we need to do something different. And by the way, stories, as we know, oftentimes can be ensconced into law. Law is a story. That's all it is. All of it. Religion is a story. We base the way that we value operations and we value human kind of interactions around stories. And when we find that something is reprehensible, we can actually make a law that says, stop doing that, change that story. So I think that's what we have to continue to say, is like, that's our job. And if we don't do it, who will?
I love that. I'm going to come back to you about that. But Roger, I guess you feel the same thing. You're standing on the top of a mountain here, screaming,
yelling, doing whatever we can. And are we heard? Yes. Are we heard enough? Probably not. But again, that's our job, to continue the struggles and continue the fight, take it to the lawmakers, show what's wrong, show solutions. I mean, one of the big things for us in River Blue is I really wanted to have some solution-based ideas that we could talk about. And the back half of the film is kind of towards that. And at the time, it was really, really hard to find solutions. It was we were scouring the earth and trying to find people that are doing things differently. And today, I can tell you that things are improving. Are they improving enough? No. But what, a couple of people have said to me is, once we see that type of documentary, we can't unsee it. And that is a great thing. Because, you tell one person and hopefully they tell another and they tell another and so on, and a movement can actually start. River Blue we had some pretty good success going around the world. We did an 80-city theatrical tour. We got it to industry, and I can tell you right now, there are 3 major brands that now have River Blue as a film that new employees must watch. So that to me is amazing, because I thought what we were going to do as filmmakers is get this out just to the consumers. And I thought the fashion industry, or any industry, they just kind of go, that too shall pass, and we'll just carry on doing what we're doing. And in this case with River Blue, we were able to, it actually became kind of a focal point to the industry. And I was at an event, it was a fashion event that I was asked to come and moderate, and I'm not a fashion guy. And I was talking to a head of sustainability at a large brand, and it just said, well, you must have seen River Blue. I take it, because we're talking about this. And he goes, everybody in the fashion world has seen River Blue. So to me, that was a great compliment, because if it's getting to the industry where the pollution is being generated, hopefully the consumer will catch up, and hopefully industry actually does play their part and truly does make changes. One kind of final point to that is what I've found in all industries is when you have a large, whether it's fashion or oil or whatever, when you have large publicly traded companies, the people at the top making those decisions don't want to change the money machine, because if they do and something goes a little sideways, then they're looked at and they're looking for a new job. So they don't want to change anything. It's the people kind of below them that keep pushing up against the ceiling. Those are the ones that are truly making change. And we got to support those type of people too, because publicly traded companies aren't going away. So we have to just find a way to break through and get our voice and our stories out there.
I'll bounce that back at Josh in a second, but just before I do, making a film is pretty damn hard, as we all know, the independent films from our point of view, but making a film on the environment has to be hard as well, even harder. How do you do it? How do you get around it?
How do I get around it?
Yeah.
Just keep going. That's, what else can you do? Yeah, you have to. In my case, I'm fortunate enough that I've got a couple of cameras and I can do some things, and I can just go out and figure out these stories and try to continue to tell them. So that's kind of what I'm doing is and we don't always have the right finance for them, and it's a struggle, but we find our way.
Love it. Josh, I'm going to come to you very quickly. I mean, it was great to talk to Roger and to hear that, there are people listening to his stories, and that has to be fulfilling. What about you? What is the return on your time and investment done, particularly with artificial, for instance?
It's a great question. I ask myself all that quite often. It's like, is the story leading to the impact? Because as an impact-driven filmmaker, our goal is to kind of get people to move beyond this two-dimensional screen that we're on right now, which is what we watch film on, and into the three-dimensional world and actually do something, which is very different than when you watch a spectacular movie like Barbie, right? It's escapism. You just kind of want to sit back and laugh. Amazing film. But you don't leave wanting to go do something. That's a different type of film. And so I measure success on certainly how people are moved by the film, but what they then do. In Artificial, we had kind of this amazing moment of which I played a small part as a filmmaker. I hope the whole team, not just me, but everyone that made the film. And that we talked about the implications of fish hatcheries and fish farms on wildness. And two of those main issues focused around an area in Northern California on the Klamath River, where we're going to be removing 4 dams, which will be the largest river restoration in the world. They're in process right now. One of them just came out. And then in Washington State, we were talking about the implications of a fish farm that collapsed that had Atlantic salmon in the Pacific, and they got out and were trying to compete with the native salmon population. So those were the two main themes in the film that we followed. Back-to-back 2 days, I was in Washington, D.C. with one of the main characters of the film, a Yurok tribal member who is also a lawyer for the tribe, and sat at the meeting at the Federal Energy Regulation Commission when they decommissioned those dams. It happened. They said yes. The very next day, Hilary Franz, who was the Commissioner of Public Lands for Washington State, said no more fish farming, salmon farming in Washington State water. Back to back, those things happened in 2 days. I have no idea how that happened, but the world spoke in a very, very amazing way. And I just sat back and said, oh, we had a part in this. We didn't do it all. There's a lot of people who have been fighting for years to do that. But that's our job as filmmakers, is to elevate that, to bring the voice of those communities doing the work to the masses that can help put the pressure on to actually make action.
My goodness, I'm loving. It's like pouring warm caramel with bits of rock salt down into my ears when I hear this, because as documentarian myself, I understand the hard work that goes in behind it, and sometimes, you know, I've made a lot of films, and sometimes you get the return, and a lot of the times you don't, but you keep on going. So I just love the positivity of this. Our audience is a bunch of crazy, creative misfits and independent filmmakers. And I'd like to sort of bounce onto a little bit of advice to them. And I, you know, what Roger said, you know, pick up a camera and go tell a damn story is the way that I live my life. But Josh, how did you get the sort of the crave energy, in the craving, the desire, the energy to go off and to pursue this field, down this path of environmental filmmaking?
Well, oddly enough, it has a French connection. In that when I was a kid, my idol was Jacques Cousteau, and I saw Jacques Cousteau as an adventurer, as a scientist, and I devoted my life to science. I have degrees in fisheries biology, both an undergraduate and a graduate degree, and thought that science was going to be the thing that allowed me to make change and do some of the amazing things that Cousteau did. At the time, I was also a competitive and professional skier turned filmmaker. So I started filming the people that I was competing with and started making film. You know, as a writer, they say, write what you know. As a filmmaker, I was like, well, I should maybe just try this because this is what I know. And after multiple years of making action sports films, it dawned on me that, you know, Cousteau is a filmmaker first. We think of him as an adventurer, but the only reason we know Cousteau is because he brought us to this place we couldn't go. He took us underwater for 30 minutes to an hour and showed us a world we could never see. And I was like, I need to get back to that. I had been showing people a world they hadn't seen in action sports and beautiful winter environments, very steep skiing and adventuring in the mountains. But I needed to get back to that place where we could tell stories about humans kind of interacting with the environment. And that's kind of what brought me this full circle. And then Artificial was the first kind of major film I was able to use to kind of get back to that. And it was a real opportunity for me to kind of say, wow, this happened. Thank you, Cousteau. Thank you, filmmaking. Thank you, storytelling, for giving me this opportunity. And now I'm bit. Now I've got to just keep going, because I think it's a calling, but it's also hopefully a worthy one for other people as well.
Love it. I love it. You know, tell stories about things you know. That's what it's all about. So I actually met Jacques Cousteau once, and it was I was less knowledgeable about him, but then I became very knowledgeable after meeting him, and it was a great thing. Roger, what bug bit you, when and why, and how do you keep the energy to keep going? And what advice do you have for these young folks around my table that want to do what you're doing?
Well, again, you know, for the younger generation, pick up any camera, right? Whether it's an iPhone or whatever, and go out and tell the story that you want to tell. And whether it's 3 minutes or, you know, or 100-minute feature or whatever it happens to be, if you find something that's compelling and you're passionate about, tell the story. So, you know, River Blue was actually the first environmental documentary I did. And it was just something that I'd worked on so many films and feature films and other documentaries and series and reality and all kinds of different stuff over my career. And it was kind of at a point I went, you know, I'm kind of tired of that. I want to go out and tell something that's a little different. And so that's why we ended up with River Blue. And it was just, you know, sheer determination more than a lot of things, and pulling together a great group and a great team that, you know, basically ultimately had the same kind of compassion for the environment and for storytelling. And yeah, we just kind of got together, and it was one of the things I said to my team at the very start of it, because we're doing our research and we're finding all these really horrible situations and humanity and pollution and all of it. And I just said, we really have to find some positives, and we did. But again, we really had to search for the positives. And again, now when I look at filmmaking, it's kind of the other way around. I don't want to show a whole lot of the negativity. I want to show a lot of the positivity. And so, for me, the filmmaking, it's kind of changed in that instead of being, say, 80-20 negative, now it's more like 60-40 on the positive side, or maybe even higher. Because again, I think people are tired, right? And that's why they want to go see something like Barbie, and they don't want to, just see, getting their head bashed in all the time and all this negative. We got to find some positives in here and find some solutions and try and elevate the people. So again, when they see it, they can go, okay, I can unsee that. So let's now work in a more positive way. When I go out and buy my next pair of blue jeans, what should I be looking at? That truly has happened in a lot of cases when I've been out to, whether it's film festivals or other screenings or whatever, doing Zooms like this. It's just amazing how people start reacting to it. So when you show the positives, they, instead of running away and wanting to, cut off an arm, they want to, do something positive as well. And so I think, again, that's our job as filmmakers. Let's find some solutions and let's do something positive for the world.
Yeah, I spent 10 years of my life as a war cameraman for the BBC. So I saw a lot of negativity and, beating people over the head with starving little African kids. But the person that used to be my film festival manager, she got right into this and asked those questions. She was 25, 26 years of age and was asking people in shops, where did this denim come from? What can I do? Or whatever. And I think that's what you were talking about there is the, positivity. It's a very interesting thing. And I think that, all these young people listening to us now that exactly tell the story but offer solutions and a certain amount of positivity, I think is going to help. You guys are amazing, by the way, and I feel so blessed and honored that you're spending time with us. But I'm going to go to Rodrigo, the holder of all things good and great at the ÉCU Film Festival, and he's going to open up for some questions from the ÉCU crew. So Rodrigo, it's all yours, man.
Perfect, thank you very much. So our first question comes from Emma, one of our journalism department interns.
Hi everyone. So my question for both of the directors are whether you have any advice on how we can produce a film with ecological and environmental friendly approach.
That's a very good question. I think I'll speak for all filmmakers and say that it's always an issue that trying to capture these stories. In doing so, are you doing any harm by actually going out to capture those stories, including air travel and what we're using, the kind of resources it takes to do these things? It's always a conundrum. So we're always looking for ways that we can decrease those impacts. I mean, right now, what we're doing on this silly thing of Zoom is amazing because what we never could do before was meet people and have pre-Zoom calls or pre-interviews. You had to go to the person, and you might spend lots of money and time and resources to get there and find out, oh, it's not the right person. And now we can actually have the opportunity to use some of this technology to kind of do some of the work for us beforehand. So we're always looking for ways to kind of economize the filmmaking process, which should also have less environmental impact, but it's something that we always have to keep considering. What are the ways we can continue to create that impact?
Great, thank you.
What about you, Roger? Do you have any advice for the young filmmakers?
I would say that for young filmmakers, look local first. What's going on in your backyard? Again, I was lucky enough to go and shoot River Blue and we travel through 11 countries, but to Josh's point, there's air travel, there's all these other things that we had to do. And when I look back at that, I mean, that was nice, but I think looking local is really the first point. A lot of times you don't have to travel very far. You can travel on a bicycle, you can travel on all kinds of things and leave a less of a footprint. And so again, for young people, I'd say look in your backyard, look at your local river, look at your local, environmental groups that are doing really good work. And, you look at their stories and tell from a local perspective, I think is really where I'd go with.
Yeah, thank you for
Perfect.
the
So-
answers. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Perfect. So one follow-up to this question that I have is, Barbie was produced in a very green way, trying to make it as environmental as possible, but the marketing had completely the opposite way. Is there something that you as filmmakers can do so that the people who are marketing your film follow the same thinking as you?
We're kind of doing it right now. We're on Zoom. We're getting our stories out in a different way. And quite honestly, let's use the technology. I mean, I've done lots of film screenings, and at the end of it, we've had Q&As, and I'm sitting in my house, and I don't have to travel to London or Australia or wherever. We can use the technology that's in front of us, like we're doing, and we can help promote and show and screen by using technology. And why not?
Yeah, I think the difference too is that Barbie ultimately is telling you a great story, which they hope ends up in you buying a doll. Consumerism, driving consumerism, right? And we are hopefully telling stories that say, how do you use that same consumer influence to do something different, right? So we're still marketing a film. There's still resources and time to do so. And there are, some costs to that environmentally, but we're also saying at that point, hey, now consider how your impact is doing this to decrease as opposed to increase. I mean, consumerism itself has to be looked at as to how do we use a capitalistic model to drive good? And that's choice, that's solution-based. It's looking for stories of people and promoting stories in the film and in the marketing of the film, for people that can show you how you can have a different impact through your action. And I think that's what we do as impact filmmakers, as opposed to sell dolls, but with a really, really good movie.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question comes from Seth.
Hi, I'm Seth. I'm also part of the journalism department here at ÉCU. And I just got a quick question. I'll start off with Roger. I think in our day and age, a lot of a lot of my peers feel kind of this sense of paralysis, something that you talked about earlier, the sense of lack of hope. I'm curious what you think people like us can do, everyday people like that watch your films, viewers of your films that want to do something and want to enact change. What do you think they can do?
You know what? Again, they can look at their local organizations, whether it's Greenpeace or just so many different environmental organizations around the world. Become a part of it, become part of the community, and see what it's about. And then help in whatever way you can, whether it's getting out and doing some filmmaking and finding a cause that you really like. But I think there's so much hope in the world, in my opinion. There's lots of negativity, but if you look for inspiring stories, inspiring people, and become part of that inspiring kind of community, there's lots of avenues and there's lots of positivity that you can help with in many different ways.
Perfect.
Great,
thank you.
thanks.
Our next question comes from Alap.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so the first question, that I wanted to ask is for Josh. Have you ever experienced any resistance from the local populations?
Yeah, well, funny, yes. There's a couple interesting stories. So when we started making Artificial, we actually did look locally, because one of the things we wanted to do was figure out who actually felt this issue, not just a bunch of anglers who wanted more fish to catch because they wanted to have fun. And my wife had gone to high school with a number of Yurok tribal members and introduced me. And they said, oh, come to Northern California. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. They said, come and film with some of the people here who know the issue. And so we did that. And so we planned a 3-day trip to do just kind of an exploratory trip. We got up there and we started filming with these people. And somebody came up to us and said, the chairman of the tribe just heard that you're here and you didn't ask. And we were like, oh, we didn't know we were supposed to ask. We were asking the individual people, but yes, we're on tribal land. We didn't know the process. And so we were kind of brought into the chairman's office, and he said, what are you doing? And explained the whole thing. And oddly enough, the chairman, who could have gone a different direction, said, I believe in what you're doing because I know what's wrong with those hatcheries and I know what's wrong with those dams and I approve it, but you need to meet our lawyer to get approval to go through this process here. And in walked Amy Cordalis, the one I mentioned to you earlier, who is the lawyer for the tribe, but she also was the one who has been fighting for the same kind of free-flowing river for quite some time. So she became immediately the lawyer and then one of the emotional cores of our film. So yes, pushback will always happen. What happens is how you meet with it, because somebody will call you out. Somebody will say, you're not welcome here. You didn't ask. Why are you doing this? Are you taking my story? Are you trying to benefit from me without like asking? It's really, really, really important, especially when we go into communities that have been really the recipients of bad policies and pollution. And then we're asking of them to give their story and taking it from them. I mean, we have an honor to do something before we take their story to explain what will be done with it. But I think it's always good to say, how do we enter a community with an open mind and say, what's the proper way to act in this moment in this community as we come as storytellers from outside of the community?
That answers my question very much. Thank you so much.
And our last question comes from Michaela. Michaela, you're...
Hello, yes, I'm here. So my question would be, you mentioned that you support from 3 big players in the industry. Did you get any sponsorship from anyone?
This is for Roger.
No, I purposely did not go to anybody in the fashion industry. I went the opposite way, and I didn't want to be beholden to anybody in an industry where I'm kind of shining a spotlight. So no, we looked at financing in really a different way. Fortunately, I knew a couple of people that were kind of high net worth, and I said, this is a story I want to tell. And I'm looking for philanthropy more than anything else, because this is an expensive story to tell. And, and they believed in it. So I got a group of people together that just equally all believe that the story should be told. And so I didn't go to traditional finance models. I also knew that the story was going to take a long time to actually tell. And it actually took us 3 years to produce the film and going into different places because, to Josh's point, we actually had local people that I hired to go in and make sure that we were kind of doing the right thing and approaching it in the right way. And so, I truly believe in that. You got to go in and not heavy-handed, but go in lightly and just say, this is what we want to do. How do we work together? And is this something that you would allow us to do? And it worked in our case. And I thought it was the right approach. Again, if I'm doing another story, which on a different industry, again, I would not go to the industry and ask for their financial support because you could end up just doing a commercial for the industry, and that's not what we wanted to do.
And as a follow-up question, did you get any resistance or any censorship from any other big players?
No. I did ask a couple of the fashion brands. There's a couple of fashion brands I know that have significant R&D facilities, and they're doing different things and they're trying different things. And we tried to get into those brands and say, here's all the questions. I wrote out, here's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about the negative stuff. I want to talk on the positive stuff. And what we ended up with is running basically into their communications department, and they didn't want us anywhere around their story because, again, they look at it as what's the positives for them. I look at it completely different and go, well, we're trying to show your positives and trying to show that you're making steps so that maybe a consumer will look to your brand and want that specific thing if they know that it's being done or manufactured better. But yeah, in our case, the fashion industry really kind of put a stop to us and didn't want us to get involved. So we found other ways.
And actually, I might have a question on both of you. I'm very interested because of you're creating environmental movies. how much environmentally do you think during the production, or if you support the environment also while you're filming the movie?
Again, yeah, that's the trick one. It's how do we? Well, I'll say this because I think it's relevant. Is that filmmakers are really good at asking questions. They're not really great at making solutions. They can highlight solutions, but we can't make the solutions. And I've fallen into that trap multiple times and trying to kind of wrestle with the issue and learning all the parts. And you say, oh, well, this is how it would be solved. But that isn't our job. Our job is to put the question out there and then have other people answer it with their solutions. And I think when we're making the film, we have to ask ourselves, what can we be doing in addition to making the film? So is that a lesser impact of our travel, of our resources making the film, of how we go into communities with smaller group of people? I mean, this is a really good thing for young filmmakers. You have access to tools, including, the phone, as was referenced earlier, and a small sound kit with 2 people. You can make sound and image with almost nothing, and you can have a very small impact, which means that people will integrate you into the community a little bit easier, right? So that's one approach. But then you can also say, during that time, what can we be doing? Are there organizations we can support? Are there ways we can help amplify their story while we're making the film? Are there places we can donate some of our time or effort to while making the film, or come back afterwards? It has to be holistically viewed.
So thanks for the ÉCU crew for the questions. It's very interesting, and you've inspired these young minds, I have to say, gentlemen. I find it, I'm inspired, and I think that we'll wrap this up shortly. But I do want to ask, I love Roger's point about look locally, and I think that's pick up a damn camera and go shoot a film. Is the ÉCU crew hear that all the time from me? Pick up a camera and go shoot a damn film. It's not that hard, but I'm wondering what you guys are up to next. Again, thanks to the BBC World Service, I heard a great semi-radio documentary about how lithium has been discovered in Ghana, a country I know relatively well in Africa, and I'm like, great for the economy, but it doesn't bode well for the environment. So I was suggesting to young Seth, pick up a camera and go to Ghana and make a film about it. I'm not sure he's going to yet. But I'm just wondering, Roger, do you have something on the horizon for you?
Well, actually, you know what? I've been asked, it was actually a couple of people in Europe that have seen the film and enjoyed it. I thought it was worthwhile, and they've asked if I would actually consider doing kind of a follow-up and an update to River Blue. And so I am looking at that. Another group actually in Los Angeles kind of would like to take this in a different way, and we're talking about a feature film that could be based kind of on River Blue, but taken again in a different way. And kind of like the film The Big Short, Michael Burbank film. Anyways, we're working on a couple of different things, and again, I'm trying to be considerate again of locals and our impact, and again, working with some local people, Indigenous and others, that we can help them with their stories as well. So I'm working in a couple of different ways, and we'll see what really comes out of it.
Josh, what have you got up your sleeve, young man?
Been working for about 2 or 3 years now on a film about plastics and human health, and really what the impacts of the chemicals in plastics are doing to the fertility of humanity and fertility of other animals that are bumping into these toxins. And it's a story that's hard to find hope in, but there actually is hope, because we're beginning now to see that there are solutions if we want to head that way. But that, again, is the question. Will people see the problem and then choose to go a different direction? Plastic is one of those pressing ones. It's a fossil fuel-based chemical, and we have made 50% of all plastics ever have been made since 2015. So we are just like rolling towards the future with more and more implications. So that's where most of my energy has been placed, but lots of other little ideas of targeted impact films that are short in form too, because I think not every film has to be long. I actually sometimes think that we're a bit of a dinosaur in making feature-length films when people are watching films on TikTok and stories on Instagram and reels, and we have to meet people where they are with these stories as well. So I'm always trying to find different ways to kind of make versions or smaller pieces that can kind of really animate people in this space where they consume these media stories.
Well, I feel very honored and privileged that you guys came along to us, but I think that not just us as a podcast or as an organization, but I think the world in general, because we always need these crazy people standing on mountains screaming out the good and the bad things that are happening to the world. And you two are. You don't seem like crazy people standing on top of mountains, but rest assured, I think that's what you're doing, and I think all of us owe you a great debt of gratitude for doing that and having the wherewithal to keep doing that. But I just want to do a recap here for the ÉCU crew and anyone else listening. And I think that the thing that's come out of this conversation for me, I'm old enough to do lists, gentlemen, and I think lists are good things on recycled paper. But I think the thing that I got out of this conversation was passion. You guys have a lot of passion. There's teamwork involved in making any film, and I think that what you mentioned there as well is you've got to find a good team around you. Making a film, whether you're making a short TikTok film or a long 3-year odyssey, there's a time investment. You have to really believe in what you're doing. And again, this is my advice, believe in what you're doing, because it's going to take a lot longer than you ever think. I've never had a baby, but I've always thought making a film is like having a baby. It takes a long bloody time. Teamwork, time. Roger, what you said about searching for the positives made me think back to those days in Somalia when we were there, and it was hard to find a positive, and I wish that possibly I had done a little bit more of that. Positives, solutions. Look locally, but for heaven's sake, somebody please go out and make a film on Ghana about lithium, because they're going to mess that up really badly. The thing that you guys would understand very well, because you make films, and offering advice here to the ÉCU crew and other people, it is not easy. It will not be easy. Nothing rewarding comes from doing something easy. Do it hard, but just do it. I think that's one thing. And the other thing we didn't touch on, because we don't have time, because I'm being respectful of your guys' time and the audience and whatever, but relatability. And I think, Josh, what you were just saying then is, let's make this relatable. Let's put it on a TikTok video. Let's do this. But sometimes, and I told somebody here the other day about this. It's like, what's the best way to eat an elephant? And it's one mouthful at a time. And I think that, making a worthwhile story relatable sometimes just takes the little short bits, helps a great deal. So, guys, I'm gonna say a big thank you from the ÉCU HQ here in Paris. I'll just give us a shameless little plug. We're with the European Independent Film Festival. We've been around for 19 years. We also run the film festival in Asia, and we have some exciting news coming up shortly about Africa. Our job is to discover, project, and promote the world's best independent films. That's telling stories. Breaking it down to that, it's telling stories. We're open for submissions. We're looking for the world's best independent films. But going back to these two guys that we've talked to today, it's been such a privilege, honestly. And I crazy people standing up on a hill shouting into the dark. That's pioneer stuff, and you guys are pioneers, and keep it up. And I salute you, as do all of us here at the ÉCU crew. So thank you very much, Josh and Roger. Thank you to the ÉCU crew. Thank you to Rodrigo for making all this happen. Thank you, gentlemen, and
Thank you.
we'll see you all again soon. Okay, roll it down.
Thanks for having us.
No worries.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.